All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Musicians Dystonia Live Talk. I'm here today with Anna Détári, who's a really great friend across the sea. And Anna, I'm just so happy to have you here today.
I'm very, very happy to be here with you today, Katie, as well. It's lovely.
Well, Anna, if you could start off by telling us a little bit about what got you into music, a little bit about your background for those that might not know you, just so they kind of get a feel for who you are and where you came from.
Sure. Okay. So I started playing the piano. I'm from Hungary to start with. I'm from Hungary, Budapest. I'm Hungarian. And then I was brought up in a family which is not very musical, but we inherited an upright piano when I was about 5. But even before that, I found these bluesy old recorders at home and started like trying to play tunes on them, like from a very young age. And then we ended up with this piano, and the family was like, "Oh, kid music, piano, she seems to like it, let's get her some lessons." So I started playing the piano, which was absolutely lovely. I got a sweet teacher. I played a lot, practiced none. So I just kept on doing my stuff on the piano. And somehow I really wanted to pick up another instrument. And it was either flute or cello. And then in the music school, the flute teacher had an opening. So that kind of decided it. I was equally in love with both instruments, but flute it is then. So I started playing the flute at 9, 10, and I immediately fell in love. So that I felt that was my thing. I made my decision. I'm going to be a flutist. No questions about that. And then I went through a very not really great education, not great teachers, emotionally abusive, perfectionistic, teaching experience. I'm pretty sure we're going to go in there. But I went to a specialized high school in music. There I had an absolutely horrible teacher. And I had very bad experiences with my education. I graduated my master's degree from flute performance in 2007.
Oh, wow.
And then went on playing. So I did mostly contemporary music, solo recitals, small chamber music, but I also worked in the orchestra of the Hungarian Operetta Theatre, which was a lovely job. I loved that. So I was substituting with someone for 4 years, which is, I absolutely adore that. It was a lovely job. And then in 2010, after a couple of quite successful big contemporary solo recitals, I felt something on the last concert that I somehow lost that sensitivity in my lips, that the notes weren't really coming out the way I wanted them to come out. And so I decided I needed a break. I was just overworked, so tired, so stressed. Lots of things were going on at the same time. And a week later, I wasn't able to make a sound.
Oh my goodness.
So I literally picked up the flute.
So it was really fast. Some people say it's really gradual onset, but for you, it was rather fast, wasn't it?
Just I was under a horrible spell. Literally, I couldn't understand what was going on. So after the very last concert, I had this horrible feeling that, this is not great. Something is not right. But I just need a break. And I so convinced myself that was an issue, that I was tired, and that probably was part of the issue. And then a week later, I opened my flute case to start practicing for concerts which were in the fall, and I just picked the flute up, and my lips were just coming out like that, curling forward instead of smoothing out, and my embouchure looked like something like this.
Oh no!
Everything was just coming forward. My jaw collapsed. And then, of course, I started to force my face into what I thought that was an embouchure. And then everything started shaking, jaw, tongue tensing up, coming up. And then I couldn't produce a sound at all.
Oh, my goodness.
So that was 2010.
Yeah, because we both got dystonia around the same time. I remember we were talking about that one point. Yeah. Well, it's so unfortunate. When that happened, did you... I know that you're probably panicking a little bit and oh my gosh, what's going on here? Did you have someone that you talked to, like a mentor or a teacher, or reach out to someone?
I didn't have anyone at the time, really. I was working with a lot of young composers, but I really felt that they were, they valued me for what I, did with their pieces on the stage. So going to them didn't make any sense to me, and also I didn't want to show myself in any vulnerable situation. So I sort of started like canceling the concerts one by one, saying that I just needed some time, and then just need to work on my sound and that sort of thing. And my boyfriend at the time, I kept like this particular composer kept calling me, so what about the concert in like November the 11th, what about the concert in November the 18th? And he was in the room, or maybe it happened in person, but my boyfriend at the time said like, she can't play at all, she won't do it. So I didn't get a chance that actually like put any words into this experience, and I was just like, he was like, what? And then I started like, it seems that I can't produce a sound, I don't know what's going on. And for quite a long period of time, I just canceled all the concerts, and I went to the hermit mode. I didn't talk to anyone, I didn't go to concerts, and I was like, now in hindsight, I was probably clinically depressed, but I definitely felt horrible. You know the feeling.
Yeah, I know how you feel. Yeah, I know exactly how you feel.
Yeah.
And it's so strange when it happens, because it's like, when it does happen, well, I mean, even when it happens gradually and it hits you, because I feel like what happens sometimes, like for me, it was like very gradual, but then it seems like there's that one day where it's just like all of a sudden it goes from like, somewhat bad to just, okay, I can't play anymore whatsoever. It's just gone.
Yeah. It just like my face somehow forgot how to interact with this piece of metal, like something like it really feels like just like forgetting something very basic, like walking or picking up an object, and somehow your body doesn't remember how to do it. It's just like the weirdest feeling, really.
I there's one musician with Dystonia that's talking to me once, and it was so interesting, because like you're really into psychology, and we'll get to that at some point here, but she was saying something to me when we're having a conversation. She kept saying, and she was like laughing. She's like, it's so stupid, like how I just can't seem to like grasp the note. Like, it's just, this disorder is just so stupid. And she was laughing and laughing and laughing and laughing. I could tell like it was like that frustration over that lack of ability, because it seems like it's like such a simple thing, like grab that pen. Okay, I've been doing that my whole life, but all of a sudden, I can't. It's like I go to grab it, it's like you just can't. It's like everything in your body is resisting it, and so it's very hard to describe to musicians who haven't experienced focal dystonia, like what it's like. It's just awful.
Yeah, it's absolutely horrible. So and then from then on, so after spending about 2 years in this very horrible mental health situation and self-pity and all those things, I, partially with the help with some books and just trying to really grasping the fact that letting go of playing and just like really arriving to that point that what, I don't even care about playing anymore. I just like want to feel okay, I want to feel like normal again to a certain extent. And the moment I sort of let go of that focus of I need to get my playing back, to I'm just like so done with this depression. I just can't go on like this. Whatever it takes, I'm going to do just to get better. And then that sort of switch of focus, and I started really focusing on my mental health and getting help. I started being better at, planning and thinking about the dystonia itself as well. Like really looking in the mirror and like observing what is actually going on here. And then after 2 years, that was a time when I really figured out that although I was like always looking at the top part of my lip coming forward, the main problem was that the sides were not pulling it to the right place. So basically, if I need to point out my dystonia, is probably these here, and then the pterygoid muscle, which is basically responsible for this movement in your jaw, putting it forward. That was sort of like letting go, making everything collapse. These were not pulling on the side, and that basically resulted in that visuals that this is coming forward. But that took me 2 years, and that I needed to have that switch of mindset, from which was not giving up in a way, because it wasn't like, okay, forget about the flute, I don't care anymore. It was like, okay, my main focus is not, I just like need to feel normal. I just want to feel normal to a certain extent. And that really helped me. And then with 2 years of work, I managed to recover completely. with a little help from a friend who's a flutist, and he had no idea what was going on, but he sort of looked at me, he's like, yeah, that looks like an embouchure. And then he sort of supported me that should, yeah, just keep doing the same thing, it looks good. Like if I would see that in a student, that, you know, I would say that looks good. And that really kept me going, that I was on the right track. So yeah, so I worked with him a little bit, but what I actually did was mostly my own work.
Well, it is a lot of self-observing that you do throughout recovery. It's just like almost like a puzzle piece, I feel like, or like a, you know, putting a puzzle together. It's just very confusing sometimes, but it's good that you had somebody that was so supportive, that was there for you and that was able to comfort you during that time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Although it did take me 2 years again to get in touch with him. So this is a person, we went to a master course together, but he was much older than me. So he did his master's much later after the bachelor's. And then he sort of helped me to, you know, prepare for auditions, because I always thought that he was a wonderful flutist. And so he was sort of listening to me all the time. I paid him to get some lessons from him before the whole thing happened, right? And but it took me 2 years because I felt so ashamed. I felt so horrible that I just couldn't make that phone call. I just couldn't text that message and say that I'm here and I don't know what's going on. And I remember when I first went, and he was like, okay, let's see what's going on, because I sort of hinted that I have big problems. And he was like, okay, let's see what's going on, play me G major scale. And I was like, sure, G major scale, sure. And he was horrified when he saw what was going on. But he was very supportive in the last 2 years of that 4 years of recovery process.
Wow. I mean, what a journey. And as you were recovering, was there any, like, how do I describe this? Because, you know, as you're recovering, some of us, like, we have that lack of sensation and then it like comes back at some point. Was there at some point on that timeline where you started to feel that switch where it was like, oh, I think it's finally getting better. I can feel it. I can feel it's going in the right direction. Was there something that you were doing during that time that was a little different, or was it just kind of like a progress, like a process?
That was definitely the point when it started feeling like playing the flute, because I had quite a long period of time when I could make quite an okay sound. I could play in 2 octaves out of the 3, 2.5 later. I could play like simple tunes, not too quick tonguing, but I was like sort of like solid. I was playing through the books I was teaching to my students. And I would do stuff like I would challenge myself, that there was this little book with like 47 exercises for students. Like, can I play the whole thing by heart? Because I was teaching so much, that I was teaching that book so much. I was like, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and try it and play through from number 1 to number 47. Can I do that? And that sort of thing. But, you know, it's like not very challenging things. And I felt that I was playing, I could hear that there was a sound coming out, but it didn't feel like playing the flute at all. I didn't connect that to my old sensations of playing the flute. And I remember to the switch, to this day, I was playing and just like, suddenly like, oh, okay, now I'm playing, but without the symptoms. And the way I usually describe, because for sure we're going to go to that part, that I'm coaching musicians now with the condition for the past 6 years. I'm trying to help people to go through the process, is that it's like you have a tunnel from A to B and it's collapsed in the middle. And what most people do, they try to go from A and they just like hit their head on that collapse every single time they try. So instead of that, you sort of have to dig another tunnel next to it. And then after the collapse, you can go back to your original tunnel and get to C. So, because if you keep trying to go down, run the same neurological program, running the same signals from your brain, you're going to run that program with that virus called dystonia. You can't just be selective that I want the good stuff. I want to run the good stuff, but I don't want to run the bad stuff. You have to sort of like start from the basic and really establish the basic. And then your brain after a while, it's a very weird sensation, starts to remember those good feelings. And you have to like, oh, here we go. This is what I call playing the flute now.
Yeah. And you were saying like how it's like you felt like, yes, your brain was like, yes, we're playing the flute again. We know this. It feels good. But was like you were saying, was your embouchure still? Was it different than like the normal embouchure you used to use though?
No, it was quite a similar embouchure, but like embouchure wise, if I looked at the mirror, it was a very gradual improvement. Because basically what I started, so like, okay, now probably it's a good time to describe the core of what I've been actually doing, and it's a core what I'm actually using with many people as well, trying to help them, is that, so your brain gives a reaction to a complex set of sensations and feedback from the environment, including the sensation of, you know, the instrument by your lips, and then your posture, how you hold the instrument, the weight distribution, your breath, the whole action, and then it's going to bring in all those emotional components as well. So if you spend, you know, 20 years freaking out playing the instrument, or, you know, have horrible experiences with an abusive teacher like I did, there is always going to be an element of like of that, right? So basically what I was doing, I tried to simplify the task to the level where I could be sure that I could do those tasks anytime I wanted without a question. And then that gave me, like, you know, I was sure that I could do that. So it was like, you know, because like when you have dystonia and pick up an instrument, you never know what's going to happen. So my strategy was to simplify it enough to be sure of myself. And that went down to the level that I was just like, do this, and then maybe just touch the mouthpiece, only the mouthpiece, to my chin. And I would touch the mouthpiece at different places of my face. And first it was challenging to actually put the mouthpiece up to my lips without any bad feelings. And bad feelings, I include not just the physical symptom, but, you know, the kind of like freaking out what's going to happen now. And then after a while I was able to do that and able to do more. I was able to just like allow some air to escape my lips while having the instrument there. And then some sound started coming out. Oh. But it wasn't like, you know, I'm trying to make a sound. I was just like doing this, and then some sound started to speak. And then I worked on the mouthpiece, and I worked on, it's very interesting, you can put the very last bit, the foot to the head joint, and have a tiny flute. And it's much less triggering. And then I did that, and then I did a whole flute, and then gradually I was able to make one sound, two sounds, and I had half an octave, then I had an octave, and so on.
That's really amazing that you were talking about how, you know, you put it kind of at different places on your face, and you were kind of just keeping it at a distance for a little bit. And I feel like that's very similar to what I did too, because I kind of did this like macro, like zoomed out kind of thing, where it's like, okay, can I bring my mouthpiece up to here and not have a reaction? Because it's like you have so many layers of reaction. It's like first you have the reaction to like your brain being like, oh my God, we're playing. And then you had the reaction to the actual like negative reaction, like emotional reaction to the dystonia, like, oh God, I don't want to do this. This is horrible. This is going to go bad. And then you have the other reaction where it's like, once you get it on your face and you're getting a sound out, it's like even worse. It's like, oh my God, this is really bad. And it's just like, so I feel like there's so many reactions we have to like retrain to, like psychologically and physically and like neurologically to even get it on our face. Because it's like, yeah, for a while I would just like be blowing on like a spoon or something, and I'd be like, can I just like put a pen on my face? And I'm like, oh yeah, I could blow on a pen, that's fine. And I was like, but as soon as I put my mouthpiece there, it would be like, oh no.
Yeah, when that happens, actually, it's like when you do something, like you sort of like go through all these small steps. So basically what we are trying to do here is really finding something which is as similar to playing as it possibly can without triggering a reaction. That's what it is. And when you sort of like, okay, now I can, you know, put a pen on my face, but then I put my mouthpiece and it's, you know, freaking my brain out, then I always kind of think along the lines, okay, what are the small steps I can build in between those two? So, okay, can I, you know, blow in a pen and, you know, have the mouthpiece on my, you know, cheek? And just like basically like training the brain that this is an okay feeling, it's not dangerous, you don't have to react to this, and keep repeating. Like if you're training a child, right? Okay, there are no monsters under the bed. We can look under the bed. No monsters. Okay, you're fine. Okay, yeah, monsters. Okay, let's have a look. Let's turn the light on. And it keeps going. And then after a while, the brain learns that, oh, there is no negative emotional feedback. There is no bad feelings associated. So I guess I can just like leave this here. and then can I leave it here? And then, you know, just build in small steps. So if you take a step which seems to be too challenging, I can do this, but I can't do that. How can I make it easier for myself to reach that higher level, and then the higher level, and then the higher level? Never go, because very often what we do, we, you know, sort of like, okay, I need to do this, and we start forcing ourselves. And then, you know, having a reaction, and that, you know, it's this negative emotional feedback, and then that's going to just deepen the whole, you know, rut we are in, basically.
Yeah, that's exactly, like, I totally relate. And that's so similar to like what Callan Solgram, when I interviewed him, the percussionist, like what his was it, did he have like a physical therapist, I think it was, that was occupational therapist that was helping him retrain, and she just told him to walk around with his drumsticks in his hand, like wherever he went, like to work or, you know, on a walk or something, and just keep them in his hands the whole time when he was doing anything else besides playing the drums. And so it's like he would just walk around with them in his hands, and he said it was really strange, because then all of a sudden it was just like over time his body finally adapted to like, oh, this is like used for something else besides just playing the drums.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he's able to readapt, and it's almost like you trick your brain, like, oh, there you go. Okay.
You have to teach your brain, because your brain freaks out, it gives a reaction. There is a reason for that. I mean, like, I really hate when they treat dystonia or any condition, you know, in general, that, oh, we don't know where this came, this is just bad luck, right? Your genes, or it's bad luck. Genes don't, like, there is a whole like field of science looking at how environment affects genes turning on and off. So don't tell me it's a gene. It's not, it doesn't make any sense. You can find, you know, the culprit gene, you can pinpoint that, but you still have to take the environmental like impact on that person, around that person, into account in order to understand. And just having the gene is not going to, it might predispose you, but it's not going to, like, you know, it's not like a button programmed into you that you're going to have dystonia 28. That's just not how it works. So yeah, it's with this, like, your brain gives a reaction, it makes sense because of the environment, because of your personal experiences, because of your personality traits. There is a whole lot of things which need to come together to form this constellation for dystonia. And then when we are in that position, we really need to be super patient with ourselves and really observing, like, okay, what gives me a reaction emotionally or physically, or, you know, the symptom, or with the instrument or without the instrument, what is going on, really paying attention. And I had, like, just an example, a horn player I've worked with, and every single time, like, she sat down that, okay, we are going to do retraining now, we can set a timer, we're going to practice for, you know, 15 minutes, because that's how long I can concentrate. And she kept freaking out. So what we did at the end, she had like 3 mouthpieces, and we just put it in random places in the apartment. And as she was walking around in the apartment doing the washing up, like, you know, cleaning up, you know, to the bathroom, back for a bath, she would just pick up the mouthpiece and put it down, pick up and put it her face and put it down, just that one time, and just went on. It's a very similar kind of approach what you describe with the percussionist. You're just teaching the brain that this is okay, this is not dangerous.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you like want, yeah, it's just like, you know, interacting with a tiger. It would take quite a while to the brain to understand that, no, that's not dangerous, you can go close to the tiger, it's okay. You wouldn't like manage that on the first. Or if you have a phobia, you can't just like, they can't just drop you in with like a container full of spiders, like, oh, it's going to be fine.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, it's kind of like a weird, like, reverse exposure therapy somehow. Like,
absolutely. And I think the key is really self-compassion to, you know, have that sort of patience, and then not being aggressive with ourselves and like, you should be able to do this, but I can't. Like, okay, so where are we going from here? So can I just, you know, aggressively force myself and then fail over and over again? Or can I just like stop and be compassionate with myself? It's like, okay, honey, what's going on? What do you feel? How do you feel? Is it okay? Is that okay? So that sort of approach, which is really just not a typical professional musician approach.
Yeah. Well, it's like, you know, we're talking a little bit beforehand too about the or maybe we were talking about it, maybe it was some other time, but about how this performance mentality, like mindset that we kind of inherit from our teachers, you know, if, like you said, if we had a particular teacher that's very tough or not, you know, just in that mindset where it's like, yes, you have to do this right, you have to do it perfect, you have to do it this way, you know, it's my way or the highway. kind of type of thinking. So it's really hard when you encounter that, or you're taught to think that type of way, or even if you're like an A-type personality, to overcome that type of like kind of rigid thinking. It's very difficult.
Yeah, I really feel like the main mistake we're all making is that music is about, you know, joy and creativity and enjoyment, and then we have been trained like, you know, circus animals. Play that Mozart, this is the metronome number. This has nothing to do with music, but this is the way we train. And I think that the real problems around like anxiety and perfectionism and performance anxiety start from when you feel that you're in a situation your skills do not match the challenge. And this is the key all through the education. So if you teach a kid, if they continuously feel that their skills match the challenge, but it's still a challenge, if it's too easy, it's going to get boring. But if I feel that, okay, if I do this and this and this, I'm going to match this challenge and the next one and the next one and the next one, that gives such a stable, you know, psychological setup. And it's not just in music in general, but if you continuously feel you're being told that you're going to fall short and they shame you for that, you're going to go into that situation with a lot of fear all the time. And that's going to have an impact because emotion and motor, like, areas in the brain connect. You can't just like say, okay, this is neurological, this is psychological. It's like one brain. It's the same, like everything is like wired together. If you keep going into that situation with fear, that's going to have an impact on how you use your body.
Yes, exactly. And that's what I felt like I dealt with my last horn professor that I had during the time I got dystonia. And again, like you said, it's multifactorial, so it's not like I blame that professor or anything, but it's like you said, because what I kept encountering was this idea that kept kind of being told to me of like, because I was a natural player like my whole time up until then, and then all of a sudden it was like I was being told like, well, Katie, if it's easy for you to play the horn, then you're not trying hard enough. Like you're not, you know, almost like, you know, music should be this really unattainable, like this, to be a professional should be this unattainable like thing, and like you're obviously not trying hard enough if you go and practice and you keep saying like, oh, it's easy, or it just comes out effortlessly. It's like you must be doing something wrong. It's like, oh, well, wait a second, there's something wrong with this, because you know, I don't think that music should be looked at this way, where it's like you have to have it perfected down to the very last detail. I think there has to be some form of acceptance of imperfection to really be that kind of like masterful musician. Yeah. At least that's what I believe, you know.
Absolutely, because that with that kind of rigidity, there goes your creativity and your expression. So like my flute teacher used to write on the top of the notes how many vibratos I should have on that given note.
Oh my gosh.
So we start, that's going to be 9, that's going to be 6, like no room for my own expression, no room for my, like, and I wasn't really allowed to experiment like with different tempos, or like this has to be in 132, that has to be in 98, and like continuously being shamed if I didn't, you know, sort of like reach that goal. And back to this whole thing, many pieces in the puzzle, many normal students actually just left. Like many students like, okay, this is bullshit, I can't take this anymore. But I stayed. Why did I stay? Because I had a background which already sort of like grew me into this like, oh, you know, acceptance and authority figures, they are like, they always know best, and I, you know, not being, you know, secure in myself. So I already had certain things on which this kind of thing built on and made sense to me at that time. I was 14 years old. So so it's always like bits and pieces which together make sense, and then, you know, basically create this situation in your life. So, and yeah, this is one thing I really want to talk about, this kind of like biopsychosocial or psychosocial approach in the research as well, and treatment.
Yeah, and before we do that, if you could tell everyone a little bit about your background in your research and how you got into the programs that you got into, because I can't remember if you went over that yet or not. But for those of you who don't know Anna, she went on to do studies and to do research on this, so that's what she's currently doing. But you already have one degree or is it 1 or 2 already in like in music and medicine or psychology?
Yeah, that's right. So so I think I left off the story when I just got better. So basically what happened there is that I started talking about it, and then people started showing up and asking how I did it. And in short, I tried to give advice, and after a while, like I really met this point, like I know what worked for me, and it seems to be working for other people as well. But I really want to know why. And I really want to look at the research. I want to be reliable, because in a way, when you're coaching people or talking to people with a condition, it's an enormous responsibility, because one word from you can, like, you know, help them or crush them or hurt them. It's enormous responsibility. And if you do that, you want to do it right, and you want to do it based on science. You want to you don't want to dismiss people's, like, you know, worries, or you want to really look at them and understand as many elements as you can. And obviously we're not perfect. Obviously I would do coaching with the same people I've like worked with 5 years ago very differently now, because I keep learning. But the goal was to really get a science degree and try to like really look at this thing from a different viewpoint, not just like my own experienced musician viewpoint. So I did a performance science MSc degree at the Royal College of Music in London. So I went there, I did that degree, and I got a PhD position and a scholarship at the University of York, also in the UK. And that's what I'm doing right now. So I'm in my 3rd year, done 2 studies already, and I'm working on the 3rd. And at the end, I'm going to advertise a little bit my questionnaire study, because I still need responses for my questionnaire study.
Well, and she's won an award too. Like you've won some awards recently that have to do with your research, right?
Yeah. So I won a like competition for PhD students, and I won the PAMA, the performance performing medicine, performing arts. Performing Arts Medicine, Association, yes. So they had a Young Investigator Award named after Alice Brenner, who started this whole like musicians' health and performers' health. So I won that last year with my article, my interview article. And I've been to a couple of conferences in like Melbourne. We had a conference on performance science. I was at the Dystonia conference in Hanover, which is organized by Eckhart Altemüller. I presented my poster there. I gave a talk in Melbourne at this conference. I gave a talk at the Sismus conference in Berlin. I went to, where else did I go to? Hanover, Melbourne, Berlin. I was supposed to talk at the PAMA Symposium this year, and I was supposed to talk at an Arts and Medicine Symposium in Boston this year, and Helsinki at the Music Education Symposium, but COVID happened, so that didn't happen.
Oh my goodness, Anna, you've been way more busier than I thought. That's amazing.
I sort of hit it off, and then just did all these studies and started talking about it, because I think it's very important to just put a little bit of a different perspective on that field, because like it's mostly ruled by neurologists who are viewing this whole thing from a very specific viewpoint. And they're doing amazing work. Many of them are doing amazing work, but there are large bits are missing from this puzzle, in my viewpoint, and that's namely the psychosocial work environment, and that's what my study is really looking into. So psychosocial environment, which means that the interaction between the person's like own psyche and own like personality traits and the environment, so that interaction, and also like the psychological traits themselves, and then all the behavioral traits which come from them. So for example, your practice behaviors, how you're going to practice, how much you're going to practice, are you going to take breaks, do you have a plan, is this like, you know, is it enjoyable, is it not enjoyable, if you're in pain, are you going to stop, or are you going to, you know, take some time off, or you're going to press on, all these things coming from this interaction. It's a very complex picture. And then my studies are sort of exploratory studies, because no scientific study has been done on the topic so far. So it's quite a new, I'm breaking quite a new ground here.
Awesome. And I just want to say how proud I am of you, and also jealous too, but it's like a combination of both. But I'm so proud of you because I mean, I'm always telling people, if I was talking to them saying like, yeah, I just keep thinking, I'm like, when is this gap going to be bridged? You know, like, or we're going to bridge this gap somehow between the medicine world, or the, you know, like the health world and musicians, because it's like there are, you know, like health people that care about musicians, obviously, but like you said, it's like there aren't enough musicians, that there's just this connection that's missing there. And I'm just so glad that you're doing this, and it's just that program that you're a part of. It's so awesome that it exists now. I mean, how long has it been in existence? Because I mean, you wouldn't have been able to hear about this like not very long ago. So.
Yeah, absolutely not, and I really feel that there is a lot of hope and there's a lot of change in the field. So if you look at the scientific field in general, we are also moving away from this very reductionist perspective that, okay, we have a kidney problem, you're going to look at the kidney and nothing else, sort of thing, because more and more conditions are just like, people think they are unsolvable. Like, how do we solve cancer? How do we solve like high blood pressure? How do we solve autoimmune disease? And then with this whole reductionist viewpoint, it seems unsolvable. You can find like one trigger and then say, oh, this is possibly a trigger, but there are 6 billion others you didn't take care of, so you can't really, you know, see the whole picture. So science itself is moving away from a more like systems thinking, seeing everything in its context with the timelines and also the other factors, not just like that one thing. Like, don't misunderstand me, reductionist science like took us a long way. We wouldn't have a mobile phone, we wouldn't have, you know, moon landing, we wouldn't have so many different things without reductionist science. And if you break your arm, or if you need like a brain surgery because of a tumor, that's what you need. You need one person who's like, okay, there is a broken bone, this is how we fix it. Or, you know, there is infection, this is the medication to take. That's awesome that we have that. But when it comes to like these more complex issues, we really need to look at the full picture. And one of my favorites in the field is Gábor Maté, who's actually a Hungarian-born scientist.
Oh, I didn't know he's Hungarian.
And
Hungarian-born. That's awesome.
Yeah, he was Hungarian-born, and he's really, his main focus is ADHD and addictions. But then he wrote a book about autoimmune disease, cancer. When it's the title is When the Body Says No, and it really links psychological states and behaviors to what actually happening in the body. It really argues that you can't, you know, cut, you know, mind and body into and like only look at the body or only look at the brain. And so modern science really likes these boxes. This is neurological, this is psychological, this is physical. There is no such thing. Everything is just so much connected to each other. So I'm really excited about his work because you can translate quite a lot of that to Musicians Dystonia as well.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's so great that you're talking about this, because I feel like it's so difficult to talk about it. How do I say this? Because it's so wonderful that you have a background in this, but also that you're doing research. So I love how it's like you're able to think analytically about it, but also like have many perspectives about it, where I feel like sometimes musicians, we get a little bit too lost in like, I don't know what it is. Like, you know what I mean? Like sometimes it's like, oh, too lost on one side of the spectrum, lost on the other side, where it's like, I feel like you are all about the facts, all about the research, all about finding out the details and going really in depth. And I just really love this about you, because I mean, it's so rare to see, you know, and I just really value it a lot. I just wanted to say that. So
I really like logic. There is logic behind everything. I just want to see the logic, and then it's amazing when you have like these puzzle pieces click. And of course you have to take the individual experience into account. Every single case is different, everyone is different. And just like you said, like my case of completely collapsing in 1 week, it's not a very typical case. There are people playing decades with dystonia, so it's definitely a continuum. And also like scientists, neurologists really like to say that this is dystonia, this is not dystonia. They really like to cut somewhere. They like to put stuff in boxes. I think like is much more flexible than that. We can't really think about this in such a rigid way. obviously if someone is like way at the end of that spectrum and they have like horrible symptoms, that's very clear, but there are a lot of people playing with symptoms they don't quite understand or struggling, or we need to really view this whole thing as a continuum and really take into account the whole environment. Because if you're playing in an orchestra where you have like an awful conductor or a not friendly environment, or you feel that your skills won't match the challenge because it's such a great orchestra and you're so crap, that's going to have a continuous anxiety like underneath your playing, which keeps going on. It's going to translate in certain muscular tension that's going to change how you play the instrument. And I call this, like, I see that a lot with dystonic players and also players who are like highly they have like high levels of performance anxiety. The thing which I call hot cup sensation, when you like have a cup of hot liquid and you really want to touch it and pick it up, but it seems hot, so you sort of like, yeah, is it hot or not? So you kind of want to pick it up, but your brain tells you that you might hurt yourself if you try. And there is a certain quality of this movement, like approaching. And I feel that many people with high levels of performance anxiety and dystonia, they approach their instruments that way even before the onset. That's one thing. And the other thing is internal focus. Am I doing this right? What is my lip doing? What is my finger doing? Oh, remember that on the Chopin and G sharp, there's that finger tree. And they're constantly having the focus inside the body, which is shown in actually in sports science. It's actually not the greatest strategy for the movement. There are like tons of articles about how it leads to choking under pressure, what they call it in sports psychology, when you basically just freeze and you can't do the movement because you're too much like, try to control an already automated movement. So that's another thing taking into account. How was that taught? Like, were you taught to play like that?
Yes. I mean, I love that you're talking about this because it's just so wonderful because with sports psychology, I mean, I feel like they know so much more than we do about performance. And like you were saying about the tension thing, like I think we were sharing some articles or something a while ago about the attentional focus, because like for example in tennis, it's like, or golf for example, you get players where I actually had my ex told me a really good example. He said, I was a natural golfer for a really long time, and my dad's a golf coach. And then one day he just told me, like, when you're going to go chip that ball there, he said, you're bringing you're angling your wrist a little too far. And he said, so all of a sudden I just got focused on my wrist. And ever since that day, he's like, I have not been able to swing the golf club the same way ever again. And it can be like that for musicians, where it's like you could have somebody that says one little thing like, well, like you're not dropping your jaw enough in this register. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, like, and then you change everything, you start compensating, or you can't stop thinking about it in some way. And it's just, yeah, like you said, with the attention, where you put your focus, it really matters a lot. Like even before dystonia and after dystonia, just in all cases, I feel,
Yeah. I actually have a theory about that. You're basically interfering with the motor program. So when you like really automatize a movement, it sits really deep in, it's really great, and then you know how to do it. And I'm pretty sure you went through that experience that, just run down the stairs, and as you like go down very quickly down the stairs, you suddenly it occurs to you like, wait a minute, how does my body do this? And for a split second, you sort of like focus on your leg, and you always stumble. You're always like, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
So basically you have an deeply ingrained automatized motor program. And the moment you start thinking about that's a whole different strain of thought and a whole different strain of signal going to the brain. Now, the main difference is that when you consciously control a movement, that's going to be slower, always going to be slower. When you have an automatized movement, just like without thinking, you just reach out and do it. But if you have to think about the movement, you have to control it consciously, like, okay, this finger goes up, goes down. It's going to be a much slower process, right? And if you have kind of both running to the muscle, like both like systems on at the same time, that your body is trying to do the movement, you're just going to try to play that, and you think like, wait a minute, I always like mess up the F sharp, and you have an extra like, sort of like signal running there, extra bit of attention. That what might happen that to the same muscle, like two different, completely different signals running into the same muscle, saying, okay, come up, go down at the same time. If that makes sense. I mean, it's a theory, and I don't know enough about neuroscience to actually go and then look at the exact thing, but I suspect that having different like controls over the same movement, it's like two people trying to drive the same car.
Yeah, and then when it's repetitive, it just unravels into this huge mess. And I mean, I hear you. I feel like that's totally what happened with me with because it was before I was learning more through like mimicking stylistic playing. Like I would have the professor I had before my last professor. He's amazing because he would do things like where I think I told you before where he would record me playing. What he would do is he would record himself playing like an excerpt on his little record player, and then he'd record me. Then he kind of like mix it up, and he'd say, "Okay, you got to listen to this and tell me next lesson who do you think's playing, me or you?" And then I'd always get it mixed up. I'd be like, "That's you for sure," and he'd be like, "No, that's you that's playing." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea I sounded like that." And he's like, "Yeah." So he's like, everything's about stylistic playing, everything's about mimicking. So he'd do lots of mimicking, like, you know, like try to make it stylistic, like, because for a long time I struggled with like Brahms, like more romantic style playing, and he'd be like, "Don't think about it like technically." He's like, "Just try to mimic what I'm doing. Think about where I'm emphasizing the notes and like how am I playing. Just try to copy me." And I would do that, and I would learn so fast. But then when I got into this technical aspect where it's like all of a sudden I was thinking about like every little articulation. I was like, is every staccato clean? Like, are all four notes clean in the 16th note run? Are they precise? Are they clear? Is the front of my notes articulate? You know, or how are the ends of my notes? Are they tapered out on every single note? It's like everything had to be precise, or I knew somebody was going to step in and just be like, nope. It's not clean. It's not clean.
Yeah, and what you're describing there with your old teacher, that's like the most efficient way of learning. I mean, like, look at how babies learn to walk or like do stuff. And I'm not saying that there is like, we have amazing cognitive skills as a species. We have an amazing frontal cortex, which is capable of amazing things. In certain parts of the learning process, you need to use your cognitive skill. You need to have, you know, a focus inside and like, you know, consciously control certain movements, like, you know, pianist, and then you like sort of figure out a new piece. You need some level of that. You can't just like copy paste everything in a way, but it's really dependent on the balance between these two things, right? So how much is this kind of learning? How much is that kind of learning? And I actually think that even if someone comes up with like a horrible technique, or I feel that, you know, they hold the flute in a specific way and I look at it like, oh my God, that looks horrible, and that's going to result in an injury, I'm going to be extremely careful when addressing that and making the changes super slow and letting that person's like whole system get adjusted to that. So I'm not going to get, okay, your thumb is here, it should be here, put your thumb here for the next lesson and play the Carmen Fantasia. You can't do that. And then I think that many problems come from these higher level teachers who have their own idea how the instrument should be played, and they see someone who plays it differently and she's like, okay, that's wrong, this is what you should do. And with the amount of practice and the amount of perfectionism we have, people start and like try to fix what doesn't need to be fixed and have problems as a result.
Yeah, I completely agree. I feel like that happens a lot with the horn players with embouchure changes, because I can't tell you how many horn players I've actually met that had dystonia that have gone through an embouchure change. Or they say that an embouchure change was like a huge factor within, that they think it was a huge factor within this kind of like you said, like kind of interrupting this motor skill. It just kind of stops it. It's like, oh, it's too much for the body to adapt to it, or whatever, the whole system.
And also, like, basically with a change like that, it's not only you trying to ingrain a new neural pathways, you also have to stop everything on the old pathway, right? Because your body instinctively try to act in a certain way. You have to stop that activation and then do another activation on top. So it's and of course stopping and like an old like ingrained activation is going to result in muscle tension, right? If I instantly want to do this with my arm, I'll have to have some muscle activation on this side to stop it from happening, right? And the old pattern is still going on. I'm just holding against it. So it's double the tension in a way. So that's why, you know, all these changes, and especially with established techniques on a higher level, you're extremely careful, and then really think about it. Do we really need that change? I mean, like, is it like just something I don't like in that student, or it's really not effective? Like, it could be more efficient if we do this and this and this. That student is struggling with this and this, therefore we need to find a remedy, and then we go about it very carefully. But if my problem is just like, I don't like that student's sound, this is not how you know, embouchure looks like, it should look like that, that's just stupid. Let the person live and then have their own style and have their own way of playing if there is no like specific problem we need to address.
Yeah, I definitely feel like it becomes a little too controlling sometimes in pedagogy, like not only physically, but I don't know if it's the same way in the flute playing world, but in the horn playing world, sometimes we get so caught up in like, and I had 5 different horn professors in my undergrad because I was a non-traditional student. So it's like I went to 3 different colleges throughout my undergrad, but all 5 horn professors were so different. But, you know, I was surprised because like some of them, I want to say like at least 2 of them were very like particular, like, you know, if you're going to make it in a US orchestra, you have to play this type of horn, you have to play on this type of mouthpiece, you have to have your embouchure look this certain way, you have to play this type of style, or even all the way down to the last detail, like this is where you switch over to B flat horn, not here, over here, not down here, but up here, or something, like where it's like how much control should we, you know, intervene with students playing, and not thinking about the motor skills or the process of learning, because I think it's like what Janice Kagaris, you know, another practitioner, works with dystonia.
With her. She's lovely.
Yeah, and she always says, you know, music is a process. Learning music is a process. It's not something that you can just go and just see like, well, I don't like this about what you're doing. Changes now. It's over, you know, that kind of thing.
The other thing what she says is think about music as communication, and there is no such thing as perfect communication, which I really love. And then talking about this, like if you want to end up in this particular orchestra, you have to do this. The industry plays a huge role in this. This absolutely unreal expectation they put on people, always playing like CD quality all the time. It's impossible. If you listen to recordings, like really recordings from like the 50s, 60s, people playing wrong notes on the recording, and it's fine, and no one like really started like, that was horrible, like famous pianists like just, you know, playing wrong notes, but it wasn't the focus, it was the expression, it was the style, how they approached that piece, what they had communicated through that piece, and it really changed quite a lot. So now if you go to recording studio, first of all, they're going to cut the hell out of it. And you're definitely not going to produce something which has a wrong note in it. It's just not allowed.
Yeah,
it's that sort of like the industry itself has this sort of like, you know, has a huge impact on how the musicians, you know, function in this whole world. And of course that has a huge impact on how conservatoires or higher education functions, because obviously those teachers want their, you know, students to succeed, and they say, okay, this is what it takes. They're going to press that student so much. So I wouldn't say that like I would blame anyone here. Everyone is trying to do their best, right? Even your teacher who's like, okay, those four notes need to be, she was trying to do her best. No one is actively trying to, I'm going to be horrible to my students. And so I wouldn't try to place the blame here to anyone. Just like, let's see the situation clearly, that this is not a disorder which is caused by a gene, which is like you was unlucky, so the gene just turned on when you were 28 and it caused you this disorder. Let's just like move away from that very rigid and very, you know, narrow view and start looking at the whole picture.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, and I feel like it's one of those things where it's like you have to look a lot deeper beneath the surface to figure this out, or to see how everything factors into it, like pre-dystonia, like the going up to it, and then the afterwards and everything. It's kind of like these different stages, but it's like you said, with the environmental factors, it does play a huge role. And even though, yes, we can't really blame people or certain generations for thinking a certain way or doing things a certain way, you know, because they're just doing their best and they were taught the best they could be taught by their teachers, and everyone's just trying to do their best. But at the same time, it is difficult, especially in our current environment. And I think it registers not just within music, but if you even look at our economy right now and just everything. Well, of course, you're not in the U.S., but but you know, with our economy and everything over here, and capitalism, like we just are so about, you know, this like glass ceiling. We just can't see. It just keeps up and up and up and up and up, and it's just never ending. But it's like you know, like a good example is my twin sister when she was, I want to say it was like 19. She was in this competition and she won almost every competition she entered, but one of the competitions, and she plays trumpet, and she was doing the Artunian trumpet concerto, and she sounded a lot like I'm trying to think of his name. I want to say it was like Maurice Andre, or who was it?
Andre, yeah. He's a famous trumpetist.
But she was using a lot of vibrato in her playing, and it kind of reminds me of Herman Bauman and horn playing, where it's like, you know, one of those instrumentalists where they just have something unique with their playing. It could be like James Galloway, maybe, like it's like you just know that distinct sound. Yeah. And I remember some of the judges were really impressed. They're like, "Oh wow, you sound just like him." And then one in particular was like, you know, like, "Why are you sounding this way? Like you're using way too much vibrato. Like, you know, you can't play this way because it's very un-American, like it's not American." So it's just interesting how our environment plays a role, and you could just end up in some situation randomly where you end up with somebody who happens to think that way, and then it influences your playing in just a completely different direction altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of Dystonia, I actually did have someone, a clarinetist, who played in an audition. And then one of the judges, after he played his audition, was like, "Why did you even turn up? This was horrible." And he walked off the stage and tried to play the thing again backstage because he made a mistake, and he just like wanted to correct it. And his fingers wouldn't move anymore.
Oh,
just that one sentence in the right moment, and then walks off stage 5 minutes later, he can't properly use his hand. So like how the environment plays, and I'm not saying that was a very horrible comment, but it takes a certain kind of person, a certain kind of state to get them be knocked over. So it's like, see what I see, it's like, and that's why it makes it so challenging to research, because research likes to be clean. Science likes to put things in boxes. We have validated scales. It's either, you know, significant difference or not significant difference, and then you have your effect size and your test power when you do statistical analysis. It needs to be clean, but at the same time, life is messy, and it's so hard to understand. So I basically, the questionnaire I talked about, which is out there online waiting for responses, and you fill this questionnaire out. You were one of the first ones I sent it to for testing.
Oh, thank you.
And so yeah, it includes like scales of teacher-parent, like teacher-student relationships, insomnia, rumination, like sort of kind of thinking patterns, how much you in your body, paying attention to your own body when you're doing stuff, when you're playing, how much you control your movement. It has questions about practice behaviors. It has a sports version of a multidimensional perfectionism scale. So it's like a lot of different topics. And what I'm aiming to do is see if all these things are playing into the actual outcome, that whether you have dystonia or not. So it's like a very like psychosocial study, and the first of its kind, actually. Oh, awesome. I'm really excited to see the results.
That's awesome.
Of that. And I just really want to encourage people to think about this way much more, just like, you know, other medical fields start to think about cancer, blood pressure, or autoimmune disease or addictions in a very different way. In a more like systems thinking, from systems perspective, and then look at the individual, not just like a twitching finger. Like it doesn't help if you're just looking at the twitching finger. That twitching finger belongs to someone who is a person with experiences.
Yes, I completely agree. And for anybody that's watching that's a musician that has dystonia, you can email. We'll go ahead and put your email in the comments too, Anna, if that's okay. You can email her if you're interested in filling out this research form. Is that okay if we did that?
Absolutely. Just have to guide me how to do that.
Okay, we can do it afterwards too. Well, this video will
still just, like, put the links under the this live streaming maybe, and then people can share it. And I have 2 different questionnaires. So I have one for musicians with dystonia, and I have one for healthy musicians. So I can,
that's awesome.
Because I need to compare the 2 samples, right, to say something about, because if I just, you know, I have a like insomnia scale from people who have suffered from dystonia, it's like, okay, you know, on a 7-point scale, in the general, the mean is like 6.5 for dystonic sufferers, and like I have that number. What do I do with that number? Unless I have another number to compare it with and say this is higher, this is lower, it doesn't make really any sense to collect the data. But I have this questionnaire, which is, when I say healthy musicians, I mean non-dystonic musicians.
Okay.
So with people with musculoskeletal injuries or tendinitis or mental health problems, they are all very welcome to fill out the questionnaire, because it has certain scales where they can report about their other types of injuries.
Oh, okay.
As well. So I put in a performance-related pain and injury scale as an extra to the healthy musician part, because I am also very interested to see how the psychosocial environment and other types of injuries correlate with each other. But it's going to make a difference if someone had horrible experiences or was insomniac or has like more ruminative tendencies. It's going to correlate with other types of injuries, not just dystonia. So it's a very complex questionnaire. I'm already freaking out about analyzing the data. It's going to be very complex, but I'm very excited to see the results.
Oh, that's awesome, Anna, and I'm so proud of you. I want to say quickly, hi, Richard, hi, Tiago. Tiago commented, he said, indeed, it's a trigger to feed and increase even more perfectionism behavior. Richard said, yes, super accurate recordings create unrealistic expectations and fears. Thank you guys so much for commenting, and thank you for watching too as well. I know that we're running over time, but Anna, I feel like I need like more than 1 hour with you, because I feel like there's so much, and I love talking to you. I feel like there's so much to talk about, because we both like, well, I love psychology too, but I'm obviously not studying it like you, but I could listen to you all day talk about it. So
absolutely. I'm happy to come back at some point, like maybe reporting about these studies, if that's helpful for your audience. And whenever I analyze the data, it's going to take quite a while, but I'm happy to come back and have a chat about that. And I also love talking to you, Katie. It's so easy to talk to you, and then we seem to have so like similar experiences and thoughts around the whole condition.
Yeah, I agree, and especially getting it around the same time too. It's like we've had it for about the same amount of time now. It's like, oh boy, that's a while. But before you go, I did have one interesting question that I wanted to ask a while back, but I wasn't sure how to ask it. Because I haven't come across a lot of flute players with Embouchure Dystonia. Of course, I have mainly brass players that reach out to me the most. But when it comes to flute or even other woodwinds with Embouchure Dystonia, is there like a general type of, I don't know how to say it, like with high brass, I feel like what happens is I see a lot of like either lack of lower lip control, or sometimes I'll have excessive puckering. Do you see a certain type of thing that tends to happen with flute players with Embouchure Dystonia, like certain thing that happens with their embouchure that's kind of repetitively comes up?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things is corner of the mouth either comes out or down, like one direction. It's being pulled when they try to like blow in. That's one thing which is very, very typical. I've seen the type, what I had is like this side, this kind of this pulling to the side that just gives up and everything just comes forward. I've seen that type. But what I see a lot, and it's actually quite closely related to the actual teaching and how they teach to play, is that when they start collapsing the jaw back too much, because they want to access the low notes better, and then they teach that you have to just sort of let go of your whole jaw and really push it back, and then you have a better angle instead of holding one lip on the top of the other. And that results in a lot of jaw joint issues and lots of jaw pain as well. And also that muscle I mentioned, the pterygoides, is really like let's go, and that can have a lot of impact on how the jaw is used, and then can result in tremors, because it's basically in a bad angle, and then you have to work from that bad angle. So that's very typical, and it's also something which in certain schools is actively taught to do that.
Oh wow.
So
wow. Yeah, Holly's commenting here. Hi, Holly Oswald Clemens. She is a flute player, and I've met her in person before. She's so wonderful. Hi, Holly. Holly says the psychosocial component is so crucial to understanding. She said, for me, and she has embouchure dystonia on flute. She says, for me, it has been contractions of my facial muscles, the zygomaticus, so I think right here, the levators, the risorius, and the buccinator for her. So yeah, maybe. So Holly, I think, are you having some pulling up here then, in your muscles going on? I'd like to know. Oh, she says, oh my gosh, that is exactly what prompted it for me with the jaw, Anna. Thank you so much. That's what she says.
Just a quick tip for Holly then. One of the things that really needs to, because sometimes certain muscles just turned off in a certain action, and we just need to remind that we actually have that muscle and we can actually use it. It just really has a little bit of a resistance, just holding onto the jaw and very gently pushing it forward, and really stir the movement from the top and have that feeling, and then you can actually have that muscle just a little bit reanimated, reactivated. And whenever you try to be, I don't know what stage of your recovery you are at, but just playing a little bit with, having this feeling of holding a little bit forward, and you can check in the mirror on the lips on the top of each other, and it doesn't matter how it sounds, and it's going to feel weird because you're going to feel like a bulldog.
Mm-hmm.
Because your proprioception of your own body and how it should look like, it's very different because you're used to. That can be really helpful, just to get a little bit of that, that sort of, you need this structure, you need strength into structure, because something needs to carry the load. If you let it go, something else is going to carry the load. Maybe it's going to, pain in your neck or other muscles in your face, which are going to try to desperately do the task, which you let go here. The energy goes somewhere. Some muscles going to overwork in the system if you just switch one off.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're like a trampoline, and then, there are hooks all around and the trampoline, and you jump on it, every single hook is going to take the equal amount of energy, right? But if you unhook tree and you stop jumping on it, first of all, it's going to go like this. Second of all, the remaining hooks are going to take so much more from that, continuous energy, and they're going to take on more than they're actually capable of, if that makes sense.
Oh, that's so
but I'm
great. That's such a great analogy. Oh my gosh. I've been looking for that. That's so wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, she says I'm probably about 60% recovered. Yeah.
Lovely to hear.
Holly, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you.
I love to hear.
That's great that you said that. It's really, I know we're going overboard, but I don't care. But anyways, what I love that you said that. It's so interesting that you brought that up with the chin, because it's so funny, because I do a lot of facial and jaw exercises, and one of the main ones that I love doing is the resistance of the jaw push. And it's so funny because if any of you have watched my recent videos of me playing in brass quintet, which are on my Facebook page, Living with Embouchure Dystonia, my brass quintet videos, you'll see that my jaw is a lot more jet forward. Like she's saying, the bulldog look. I have to play, my embouchure is completely different now, where my chin is a lot more forward, because I have very, how do I say this? I have cheekbones. I have cheekbones. So I have really big facial structure up here, but then my little jaw down here. And so in the past, when I had dystonia, I had my jaw dropping like that too, and it was just causing so many spasms. So now I'm doing a lot more bulking up here, like Anna's saying, moving my jaw forward to get that balance going too. So I don't know. That's so weird. That's just something that I noticed a similarity, because if you watch those videos, that's totally what I'm doing.
Yeah, and actually, just to give you, I don't know how much you're going to be able to see from this. Not really.
Okay, oh yeah, so I can see it.
That's the name of that muscle, and this is where it is in the jaw. This is what I've been talking about.
Medial petragoid?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the one. So I probably just put some information on Katie's website about this, because it's very interesting for embouchure sufferers. And then it has we could spend another hour talking about body mechanics, I guess. I've been going through a systematic anatomy course specifically created for musicians. It's called Timani, which I also would love to talk about, and really looking at what muscles, like which muscles are active when you're playing an instrument, which muscles we are overusing, underusing, and how we can create a more efficient playing in terms of body mechanics. So that would be another interesting conversation, but I'm happy to share all these links and, places where you can look for further information.
And we're definitely going to have to come back to another video, because I was going to ask you about the Timani, because I was looking up, and it's like a Norwegian practitioner that does this type of program or teaches it to people. And so I was like, oh, I want to hear more about it. So, so I was like, I'm so sorry we didn't get to it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in my second year of my teacher training, and it's essentially the person who created this whole method. She's a pianist, a massage therapist, and a yoga therapist, and Tina Margaretsen Nielsen, and she's absolutely awesome. And so she knows a lot about muscles, and she really started to understand what sort of muscles are we using when we play the different instruments, and what are the efficient ways, and what are the common problems musicians do because obviously the body has all sorts of different options when creating a movement. You have all sorts of different muscles to create the movement with. There are healthier options, there are better options, there are worse options, obviously, depending on the different types of muscles and how big they are and how many joints they run over. There's all sorts of different things playing into this. And basically what she's doing, she's looking at people playing the instrument. She sees, and this is what we're actually learning, how to see these different kind of muscles and then how they are being used when someone's playing. And then she offers exercises how to get in touch more with the feelings, or okay, this is where your shoulder blade should be when you're playing. This is hanging too much, using too much from that muscle. You have to relax this bit, but you have to have more energy here, because we always hear that relax when you like relax your shoulders, relax play relax, but you need some energy to hold you up. If you would completely relax, you would end up in a puddle on the floor, right? To know which muscles to get that strength from, to stay flexible and have enough power to actually create that sound on a violin or a trumpet or a horn, you need to be very conscious, and very often we are not being taught very well in terms of posture, in terms of breathing. And then she really goes into detail with that. So that's something I highly recommend everyone to do. But
I agree. I agree. We could totally do videos just over completely all kinds of subjects, because I was just gonna be like, breathing is a huge thing with brass players, and there's one horn player in particular I want to get on here, and she actually, from her breathing technique that she's taught, I think from her teacher, she developed Valsalva maneuver, which is where your tongue gets stuck to the roof of your mouth, and it's like the air can't escape your throat, so you feel like you're choking, and she learned how to overcome that. I was like, I can't believe that. So we could totally do a whole video series on all kinds of different topics about music playing, and we have to we're gonna do it.
So definitely great.
when you have time, when you're not busy being awesome. So
I think when I have the results from my study, that would be an awesome time when I can say something about what I found, because that would be also awesome to just let people know, especially if they choose to take part in the research. That would be awesome to let them know how it went. So we will definitely do something.
Oh, and then Tiago says, he says, Anna does amazing work. Fill in her questionnaire and help to collect the necessary data for her research. Big hug and congratulations to you both.
Thank you, Tiago.
Thank you, Tiago.
That's so sweet.
And then Holly has one last question. She says, Anna, have you done any research with Bronwyn Ackerman?
I know her and I know her work, but she's the type of person you can write 6 billion emails to and she never responds. But she is the editor. She's the editor of that journal I won that award with. So in theory, we've been in touch, but no, she's very hard to get hold on. Just to get hold of. I would love to. I know she's amazing, but she's that kind of person who would never respond to an email unless someone she knows sends.
Very busy
but
person.
Hopefully we'll be able to connect in a conference, which I was really looking forward to at a PAMA conference, but it didn't happen. So hopefully in the future. hopefully in the future. I'm currently in touch with Anna Sednicka and Catherine Butler. Catherine Butler is a hand specialist in London. I'm in touch with her. She's helping with my study. Anna Sednicka is an amazing neurologist. And like Eckhart Altemüller, Rosset Lobet in Spain. So there are a couple of Jan Kergerais, Akuko Trush is a Japanese pianist, and also like doctor at the neurology clinic in Tokyo I'm in touch with. So I'm just trying to get this network and then get, you know, bridge practitioners and neurologists and doctors and hand surgeons and psychologists together and then bring us all together and just like let us talk about this.
Wow, amazing. Anna, oh my gosh, you're saying these new like drop. It's so funny because it's like you're saying these names, but it's like almost like when somebody's dropping like, you know, a celebrity star's name. Like, yeah, I was like hanging out with Beyonce and like, you know, Tom Cruise and like, you know, and kind of stuff. And I'm like, every person you said, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I was so excited that I accidentally turned my microphone off. So
that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. It's like you're dropping those names like they're celebrities, and it was just like, wow.
Events in the future to bring these people together, like in a form of a seminar or a conference or something like that, where people can attend and like listen to these people and ask questions, both practitioners and neurologists who really care about the musicians. Like, I mean, like, I'm not saying that there is a neurologist who doesn't care about the musicians, but you have like share a certain viewpoint. So I'm planning to do that in the coming future, to get them to, you know, give a talk, have a group discussion, and then Q&A, which would be lovely. So everyone can meet these people.
Wow.
That would be really, really lovely. That's on the list. That's on the list.
Wow. That's awesome. That's like, you know, and we got to talk off camera sometime too, because I told you, and for those who are watching, you might not know, but I'm trying to go back to school again, but for arts leadership and nonprofit, because I want to start an arts organization that deals with, like, you know, musicians who are injured or have dystonia, but I want to be, you know, efficient with it, you know, like creating a model. But it's like I've been thinking about, like, do I want to create like a social model where, like, you know, like the Performance Art Medical Association, like they have their own journal, they have like their own programs, that kind of thing. And I'm like, do I want to create something like that, but for musicians that are injured, and like, and then we have events or something like that happen. But it's like such a big dream, and it's like something that's like way out there. It's like I want to kind of go back to school.
It sounds absolutely awesome. And then just one thing to add there, that there are so many small organizations, websites, blogs, people, musicians themselves, who start organizing this kind of things. One of my friends is like doing an amazing blog. I published 2 articles there in the recent past. And there are so many different things, like focusing on all sorts of different things: Dimani, Feldenkrais, Alexander technique, health in general, psychosocial environment. If we could just like connect these dots and get these people who are just really very active on this field and want to get information out there for musicians with all sorts of injuries and dystonia, if you just like connect these people, like immediately, it's like so much information there. It's just like amazing. So one of the big deals could be to actually connect with, like, and get people to get in touch with each other and you, and through you, that it sounds amazing, and producing your own stuff from there. It's I love the idea,
because I feel like it's just ridiculous that as musicians with dystonia or injuries, we don't have our own society. We don't have our own like thing where we can like meet and get together, you know, or talk, or even meet neurologists or talk to professionals, you know, or have a conference or something. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So anyways, Anna, I know this has been going overboard. I do not regret a moment of going overboard, because I love this conversation with you. And there's so much more we can talk about in the future, and we'll definitely come back and do another interview when you're ready. Otherwise, I had a couple people chime in here. Let me see here. There's a hellos. Okay. Yeah. And then I'll forward you any questions if I have any in my inbox that people have sent me as well. And then afterwards, I'm going to go ahead and I'll edit this video. It might take me a while because, you know, I started another job, so it might take me a while to get to editing it. But I will edit the video and then send it to you via YouTube. And that will be on there as well.
It's lovely. It's so lovely. Thank you so much, Katie, for doing this. This is amazing. Just like hearing from other people as well who recovered, and then it's really helpful for everyone. So it's amazing work. Thank you so much for doing
you're
this.
welcome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and log off here, and then I will call you on my personal Facebook Messenger.
Okay, great.
All right, okay. Bye everyone. Thank you for joining.
For listening, and thank you for joining us.